And then, of course, if you did find any wounding, then you'd contact the veterinary staff. So for the next 2 days, you just do a 10-minute check on them in addition to their regular husbandry check. And then if everything's good, they're considered stable. And that's it. I know it seems like we just breeze through that. We'll go through the behaviors that you're monitoring for, but it's really a lot more simple than it seems.
What extent of the wounding would you permit them to say be reappointed versus separating them from?
Only, so for the only things we separate for are if it's an eye wound, like to the eyeball. Like if it's a little scratch around the eye, that's fine. And then same with the genitals. If there's like a little scratch around the genitals, that's fine. If there's actual genital wounding, then we call it. And then same with like a lesion. If it's a deep, like if they're going to need sutures, they're going to, analgesic, something like that, then we call it. But that's it. Any sort of superficial lesions, A lot of times what we find too with these guys is they get more of their injuries from the initial introduction where they're chasing each other around the cage and they're kind of banging into things in the cage, and they tend to they'll hit their nose on things, and they get a lot of wounds from that more than actual bite wounds. And you know how their skin is so papery, they'll get so many fur pulls and it tears their skin. They get so many wounds from that from social introduction as opposed to actual aggression wounds. So that's why we don't want people to separate for minor wounding when it maybe didn't have anything to do with actual aggressive behaviors. Yeah?
Did you ever try turning them in a larger space and then moving them to their house?
We did, and it wasn't very successful. I think getting them used to a bigger space and then putting them in a smaller space, just for our situation, it didn't work.
And once you separate them, you don't repair?
Males, we do not. Females, we do. Depending on the situation, if it was a female depending on why they had to be separated. If they were two dominants, we obviously wouldn't repair. We would repair with a submissive. Males, we don't ever repair, unfortunately. Yeah. Yes?
Do you have a problem when you see a breakdown of pairs at any point or any probability?
Sometimes, yeah. We have a maintenance plan that we use to work through why we were having the breakdown, and usually we can identify why we had the breakdown, and then usually we can try and work it through. Yes. Definitely. Yeah.
How about differences in size of animals or ages?
What about it?
Do you commonly, if they're very different, pair them, or do you tend not to, or just run everything through the same scheme?
We run them through the same scheme. We tried for a while. We were trying to kind of go off the primate scheme of maybe a bigger one would do better with a smaller one, and we found that it wasn't quite the same. So we're trying. We've done some preliminary work with temperament testing, and that's been a little bit more successful than just kind of doing the size things. But yeah, it seems to be almost a crapshoot, really, with who's going to be, because we've had some where the little guy was dominant, and we've had some where the older big guy was dominant. So it's who knows.
I'm going to actually, if you're going to ask a question, raise your hand so I can hand the microphone, and that way everyone can hear you. If that's all right.
Hi. You were saying that you repair both males and females after one of the pair is lost to attrition?
Not males, just females.
Just the females.
Yes.
And is there a certain age after which you wouldn't repair?
No. Females will repair any age.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Do you have any concerns, like a specific time period where if one rabbit is removed for a procedure or something and comes back, that you have to be careful with bringing the rabbit back?
Yeah, we don't have a specific, I know some people have 1 hour, 2 hour. We don't have a specific time range. We're more cautious with males for sure. What we do with males is we try and encourage the investigator to, if you're taking a male, take both males. And even if you just have to leave them in the room while you're doing the procedure, just leave them in the room. And then when you put the other male back, just keep them in the cage together and watch them until the other male is recovered, until he stays awake. And we've had a really good success rate with that, actually. And then with females, we try and encourage the same thing, but they tend to be a little easier. So they've done better with it. That's worked for us so far. Just encouraging them to take them both has been pretty successful. But yeah, definitely with the males, if they don't take them both, if they take the males for more than a few hours, we usually call it. Definitely if it's more than like overnight, we have to call it. Because the only time we've actually had a situation where we lost a male due to fighting is they were separated overnight and someone put them back together. And we average 400 rabbits a year, tons and tons of pairs, and we've only lost one due to fighting, which you never want to lose any, but I think those numbers are pretty good. We've only lost one, and it was that situation where they had been separated overnight, someone put them back together, and it was that. So you hate to lose any, but that was the situation. So anything else? Okay, I keep going. Okay, so we'll get into the ethogram behaviors now. So understanding behavior, I think, is by far the most important part of this entire talk, this entire everything with rabbits. For the longest time, everything's so white up there, sorry, you can't really see it. For the longest time, I think we didn't really understand rabbit behaviors, and we're still kind of trying to figure it out. There was almost no literature for understanding laboratory rabbit behavior for the longest time, and even now there's very little. And for the longest time, I think we treated them more like large mice. And now that we finally are starting to understand how complex they are, how complicated their social systems are, and their hierarchies, we finally are starting to understand that they're not at all large mice. They're way more similar behaviorally to small primates. And we need to have behavioral monitoring systems for them that are much more similar to our primate monitoring systems. And I think I always encourage institutions to, if you have somebody who is really great with your primates and who really understands your primates, bring those people into your rabbit teams. Have those people train some of your rabbit people, because they are going to understand your rabbit behavior a lot better than you think. Because a lot of our rabbits are really, really exhibiting behaviors that are really similar to the primates. If you are trying to figure out your rabbit behavior, read some primate literature, because it is remarkably similar. Obviously, there are different species. Obviously, I know there's going to be a lot of differences, but there is a remarkable amount of similarities. So it's really helpful when we're trying to figure all this stuff out, because there's not a lot of literature out there. Going to the primate literature has been really helpful to try and figure this stuff out. So this is it gives us a good starting point to kind of jump off from, is going to the primate literature. And so I really encourage you, when you go back to your facilities and go back to your rabbit programs, to kind of think about that as you try and build your rabbit behavioral programs. So to do this in our program, because we didn't know how rabbit behaviors worked, really, so we recorded rabbits for hours and hours and hours to see what they were doing together, rabbit pairs. And then we just watched these videos for hours and hours and hours to see what are they doing together. And then based on these videos, we made this ethogram. And so we were able to determine what behaviors were more positive, more neutral, more negative, and then what are more kind of communication behaviors. And so doing that, that's how we created this ethogram. So the positive behaviors are reflected through these dominance, normal, or submission behaviors. So dominance behaviors are going to be this chase chase and flee behaviors. So you can see this behavior is really different from that previous behavior we saw where you had to spray. This is going to be a chase, flee behavior. This is not where both rabbits are chasing. One is chasing, one is fleeing. You have a very clear dominant and a very clear submissive in this behavior. This behavior you are going to see all the time. This is a very normal behavior. This is something that you might see every single day. In the wild, the dominant is going to require a submission displays as often as every single day from their subordinates. So you might see something like this every single day, and this is totally okay. This is a normal behavior, and this isn't something that you need to separate for. This isn't something that indicates aggression or pair breakdown. This is normal, so this is okay. Mounting and mounted behavior, this is also very normal, as long as you have a dominant and submissive, and the submissive is accepting being mounted, this is normal. Allo grooming, this once again very normal. We tend to see dominant grooming submissive, however we see it flip-flop quite a bit in submissive grooming dominant, and that's okay and doesn't indicate pair breakdown when they flip-flop, and that's totally fine. Thumping is a really interesting behavior because they do it for a lot of different reasons.